How to teach active listening, effective speaking, and articulate writing skills. In this episode, we are going to continue with one of the 12 principles that will help answer the question, how to prepare your children for the future. Get ready. This is a very powerful concept. Unfortunately, many college graduates do not learn these, even if they have a degree in communications. I'm going to share next. So my name's Doug Andrew, and I've been helping people optimize not only their financial assets now for more than 48 years, but also the other assets in all three dimensions of what I call authentic wealth. So if you're familiar with this three-dimensional wealth channel, I focus not only on the financial dimension, money, and how to optimize your money, your investments, your savings, and retirees so that they don't outlive their money, but also on optimizing the most important assets on the family balance sheet. Your family, relationships, your health, your faith, your wisdom, your knowledge, experiences, and we capture those so that you transfer into future generations more or less how to fish instead of just dumping fish in their lap. So as we proceed here, this particular episode is talking about one of the key principles that we have found that many of our very successful families who sent their children to colleges and universities, some of the best in the country, and when they graduated, they had to move back home because they couldn't find a job. And we would test them in these 12 key principles that they should have learned, and they fail miserably. We take about 6 months and teach them, and they end up usually getting job offers well in excess of $100,000 right off the bat once they are able to prove they have these 12 skills. So this is actually outlined in a 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper where I put down the first 6 principles on one side, the other 6 on the other side. At the end of this episode, I'll show you how you can get a copy of this, how to prepare your children for the future. This particular episode is about active listening, effective speaking, and articulate writing skills. And I mentioned that many times I've had applicants come to apply for employment at my firm, and I would ask them what their degree was. And I remember on 2 or 3 occasions they said, well, I have a degree in communications. But then as the interview proceeded, I was shocked at the inability of the applicant to be able to communicate what they wanted in life. They couldn't sell themselves, and that's another principle, selling and persuading skills. You got to be able to sell yourself. But they really lacking in communication skills, and I thought, what was that degree all about? So get ready. I'm going to share with you some of the ways to effectively teach your children those active listening and effective speaking and articulate writing skills, so that what they learned in college at the university can be applied in real life, because apparently so many of them are graduating without understanding how to connect those dots. So you're probably aware that there's all kinds of different tests where those applicants that usually come for employment, I know at my firm I require before they come in that they take some cognitive tests, such as the Kolbe, Kolbe. That is a series of 50 questions. It's really not questions, it's more like situations, and they select out of 4 choices what they would most likely do in a particular set of circumstances and what they would least likely do. And I'm able to then determine what is it that makes them tick. There's a lot of personality tests like that. The Winslow score is probably one of the most comprehensive. There's the color code. There is also the Strength Finder tests and quizzes. These are different ways that sometimes when people come to apply for employment, we're able to determine if they will be happy in the position, not only that they have the skills, but they'll actually be happy in that position. And the one we use the most is probably the Kolbe score and also the DISC, DISC. And the DISC assessment is used a lot by John Maxwell. You can learn about these by Googling on the internet and so forth. The point is this: when you usually go through a test, you're going to be required to either verbally articulate something, or you may be required to listen carefully to instructions. And it's always amazing how many times these applicants, I give them the instructions and they fail almost immediately because they made assumptions. They weren't really listening, or maybe they heard what they thought you wanted instead of what you actually said. So there's a lot of different skill tests that will actually bring out, are they really actively listening? Can they actually articulate what it is that they're trying to say to answer a question? And if you have them write down a little short essay answer, it shocks me how many times they do not have not only good grammar, but they can't even express themselves. How sad is that? So one of the things that I want to share with you in this episode is what I call the conscious communicator. It's just a simple exercise to help people understand what is it that allows them to be able to effectively communicate. And this is critical in any kind of a setting, whether it's in your home or whether it's in your business, your place of employment. But first of all, let me just share with you a concept I learned from Marshall Thurber. He's one of my mentors that I've had for years. He actually, I believe, learned this from Dr. Edwards Deming. Now, if you don't know who they are, Marshall Thurber became famous. He's like a genius. His IQ is off the charts. And he passed the California State Bar exam clear back in the 1970s with the highest score ever up until that point. And do you know he never took 1 hour of law school nor read one law book? He actually helped one of his roommates prepare to take the bar exam, who had been through law school for 3 years. And he helped his roommate create 16 mind maps in one weekend. And in helping his roommate do that, he said, I could pass the exam. And his roommate said, go try. And he did. Marshall passed the bar exam with the highest score ever up until that point. Now, one of his two favorite mentors, the two mentors were Buckminster Fuller, one of the most abundant-minded scientists on the planet, and Dr. Edwards Deming. Dr. Deming is the total quality management engineer that transformed Japan to the quality they put out today. Compared to when I was a kid, anything made in Japan was junk or cheap. And Deming created systems of predictability for the big three automobile manufacturers in Japan, because he was rejected by GM, Ford, and Chrysler in America. They sort of laughed at him. And hence, now the Deming Award today is one of the most coveted awards because it's really Toyota, Honda, and Nissan that became the big three. How sad is that? So Deming is sort of a systems genius. But he also taught Marshall, and Marshall taught me about effective communication. I'm going to simplify it here. Marshall taught me that effective communication is 55% body language, okay? In other words, when you speak and communicate to others, 55% of what you're communicating comes across in your body language and what you're doing with your gestures and your looks, your eyes, and so forth. 38% of effective communication is your tone, the tonality, okay, and how you say something. Only the remaining 7% is the actual words that you say. Now, understanding this, you'll begin to realize why I am huge on formats like the YouTube channel. Because of video. With video, you can not only see my body language, which you can't see when you just hear audio, but you're able to also hear my tonality. With audio, you can hear my tone. But if all you're doing is reading words, you sort of put into those words the tone. So, I've often been humored by the statement, be careful how you say things because a comma can save lives. For example, if you say the phrase, let's eat grandma, that means let's eat grandma. If it's let's eat, comma, grandma, see the tonality is let's eat, grandma. That's totally different. And so tonality and punctuation is extremely important. Otherwise, people misunderstand. And sometimes I've written emails that I thought were pretty clear, but people totally took it their own way with their own tonality. And I couldn't figure out, where did I miscommunicate? I'm always preferring to leave voicemail rather than email or text, because they can hear my tonality instead of some other AI, artificial intelligence, transferring or transcribing into a voice, a robotic voice, a text message. I want them to hear my tone. I want them to see my body language. Does that make sense? So let me go through this conscious communicator exercise to help you understand also ways to effectively communicate and what perhaps you may like better than another, and also how you can teach this to your children and grandchildren, those that you care about. Now, before I explain this conscious communicator, if this is resonating with you, I would encourage you to post a comment, click like, subscribe, share. But when you subscribe to this Three-Dimensional Wealth channel, click the little bell. Then you'll be notified every time I post an in-depth educational video like this, which I do almost on a daily basis. It's free when you subscribe, and stay with me to the end because I want to gift you a copy of one of my favorite books that I've written called Entitlement Abolition. Now, the conscious communicator is one of my favorite exercises I do with couples on couple retreats, with our children on family vacations with a purpose, with our grandchildren during Grandpa's camp, and with many other settings with our employees. I'm going to explain this to you, and then you can just use a blank sheet of paper if you listen close, or at the end you'll see a resource where you can download copies of these types of tools that I've designed and developed. So when we talk about communication, it's basically two ways. One is giving communication and the other is receiving communication. So on this little exercise, what I do is pass this out, and people take a few minutes. Maybe if it's a couple, a husband fills it out without looking at what the wife is writing down, and the wife fills it out. And they write down how they like to give communication, okay? Day-to-day information, meaningful information, and life-changing information. How do they like to give information? It could be text messages, email, verbal, one-on-one, in person, and so forth. And so the environment is down here, and the amount of detail, if it's just the bottom line or how much detail do they want, is on a scale of 1 to 5. So they write down how they like to give communication, and then down here they write down how they like to receive communication. Now, same thing. The types of communication, day-to-day, meaningful or life-changing information, how they like to receive it, and then how the environment and how much detail do they like. It's not always the same as how they like to give information. So let me give you an example. When I fill this out, how do I like to give information? I would rather give it verbally. I'd rather leave a voicemail any day than an email because they can hear my tonality. And I can spit it out pretty fast. How do I like to receive information? I would rather receive a text or an email because I don't have time to listen to somebody's long drawn out message oftentimes. I would rather send a voicemail but receive an email. And sometimes people go, oh, because I have not checked my voicemail on my office phone in 5 years. I only check my voicemail on my phone about once a month. See, I would rather receive a text. Once people understand how I like to receive information versus how I like to give information, it makes all the difference in the world. But then also it talks about the meaningful information. So let me tell you a funny story. When I did this with my wife, as we're raising our 6 children, my wife is talking, children talk all day long. She can't wait until I come home from the office and in the evening have an adult conversation. I want to come home and just be quiet. I want to just sort of rest. I would rather go to bed and get up and go running or jogging in the morning and talk with my wife first thing in the morning. My wife would rather stay up late when the kids are all in bed and talk to me at midnight. And so the timing of the day was different. She was anxious to have adult conversation. I just wanted to come home and be quiet. Once we sort of got on the same page, we understood not only how we like to communicate, but when we like to communicate. These are things that come out on this little conscious communicator. Once you fill it out, you sort of have a conversation with you, your employee, your boss, your spouse, and all of a sudden you'll have all these awakenings. Go, no wonder you have never replied to that voicemail I left. You've never checked your voicemail in 5 years. Yeah. Once you do that, then you can flip over the form and you can fill out, well, what happened and when did it happen and what did this really teach you about communication face-to-face, the spoken word, the written word, how to be able to be articulate, be concise, and get to the bottom line if that person just wants the bottom line instead of all the detail. Does that make sense? And then down here, the setting, the location, the time of day, and the frame of mind that they like to receive that communication. This is very powerful. And so it's amazing how many times we go through life for years and years, and we never take a few minutes. That only takes about 15 minutes to sit down and really talk to others that we communicate with in one form or another, almost on a daily basis, and understand how do they like to receive communication, how do they like to give it, and have them understand how you like to give it and how you like to receive it. It is profound what happens when we begin to teach how to actively listen, not just hear, and effectively speak and articulately write to communicate what we are feeling inside to other people. Here's how you can learn more. So again, if this is resonating with you, one of my best-selling books is called Entitlement Abolition. It's a 200-page book. I want to gift you a free copy. To claim your free copy, simply go to entitlementabolitionbook.com. Click on the link below. And you contribute a nominal amount towards the shipping and handling. I'll cover the rest of that cost and I'll pay for the book. I'll send it out to you. There's also options there to listen and learn and watch and learn. If you want to invest in an 18-hour masterclass that I recorded on video, it goes through all 12 of these chapters in detail on how you can learn these concepts, empower those you care about, and also all of these tools and these 12 principles in this particular series. So I encourage you to watch the other episodes, the principles, 12 critical lessons, principles we need to teach our children to prepare them for the future that unfortunately our colleges and universities are not effectively teaching.